and welcome back to our video series on decision making using your info tuition. I'm Shelley Rowe, and today we'll continue our conversation about overthinking decisions. Now first, let's put overthinking into context of our decision making model. This is the cognition, intuition, balance model. Now recall that balanced decision making is where for really complex decisions you balance inputs from your brain and gut, from cognition and intuition, from your thinking and your feeling. That balance point is represented by the concept of info tuition. However, overthinking, it's out of balance. This is where we're trying to strictly think our way through a complex decision, and we get stuck. We hesitate, we procrastinate, we ruminate. We are out of balance. Now, the last time we identified some of the early warning signs that you're overthinking it. Now, that might be when you hear yourself say something like, we're making this harder than it has to be. Or, this is just taking way too long. Or, we have been over this again and again and again. Well, if you have been over it again and again and again, then why can't you make the decision? Have you ever noticed that little nagging feeling that holds you back? That's the key. Now remember, the last time we talked about the brain science behind the nagging feeling, and we identified that that nagging feeling is your brain trying to bring more information to you from your experience. The little nagging feeling is bringing some of your very own wisdom, and it's trying to get through the din of noise of all that constant thinking and churning. So today, we'll explore how to access the nagging feeling for better decision making. Now, this is a technique that I call notice and name. Notice the nagging feeling and give it a name. For some of us, like me, and maybe you, we have to relearn how to notice the feeling because we've been taught to shove it away. Now hopefully, since the last video, you've been practicing noticing the nagging feeling. It's a skill that has value for you to notice the feeling. Now after noticing the feeling, you need to name it. Because you see, the act of naming the feeling moves it from the deep part of the brain that doesn't access language to the part of the thinking part of the brain that does include language. Naming the feeling gives you something to work with. So let's try a little experiment. I'm going to assume a couple of postures. Now as I do, notice any feeling that comes up for you and name it. Okay? It's very easy. All right, here we go. You ready? Here's the first one. Okay, so what feeling did you notice? I mean, maybe you said disappointment, concern, judgment, disapproval. Sometimes I've had people say it reminds them of their boss or their mom. Right? So let's try another one, okay? It's the same thing, just notice the posture and notice any feeling that comes up. So this time, what did you notice? And so maybe you thought approval or grudging approval, or I hear you, but I don't agree, or skeptical. So understand what you just did. That feeling came from a file folder buried deep in your brain. Something in that posture activated the memory in that file folder. When you named it, you move the file folder into the cognitive part of the brain where you can more easily talk about it and work with it. Now, it might be that if you spend enough time, you might even be able to figure out why that particular word came up for you with that particular posture. And so that's interesting. But how do you put it to work in a business setting to stop overthinking? You're going to use the same technique to access information that the nagging feeling is trying to bring forward. So you do that by querying your brain's memory about the nagging feeling. So let's say you're overthinking it and you notice the nagging feeling. But that's just the first step, to notice it. Then you need to name it. So here are some phrases that the leaders that I interviewed used to query their own brain. They'd say to themselves, there's something that's just not sitting right. Something's bugging me about that situation. Why am I hesitating? Why am I so agitated about this decision? Those kinds of questions are aimed at the green part of your brain, where those file folders hold more information for you that's trying to get through. So one of your key actions for this video is to find that phrase or phrases that works best for you. Which phrase will be the easiest for you to use with your brain? Whatever it is, write it down and post it somewhere visible so that you can refer back to it when you find yourself overthinking it. And now, when you query your brain, it will answer, if you let it. The answers from your brain typically fall into one of two categories, either fear or insight. Now, fear comes from that orange part of the brain, this middle ring of the brain, and insight comes from this inside part of the brain, that really old part of the brain. So this is your next action for this video, to ascertain the difference between fear and insight when you query your brain. Insight is that sense that there's just something more here than meets the eye, but you just can't quite put your finger on it. While it nags at you, it doesn't feel fearful, just a little unsettling, like there's more to the story. The leaders I interviewed said that when they felt that tug, they knew to dig in and ask more questions. Something in their brain was registering alarm, and they needed to find out what else is going on. Now, fear may also feel unsettling, but it feels, well, fearful. It may be the fear of making the wrong decision, the fear of standing out. Everyone is moving in this direction, and you don't really want to be the only one out on the limb going in the other direction by yourself. Or the fear of missing out, or the fear of being overlooked. This is one of the most common things that happens to all of us. There are many reasons for fear. We all experience, even those executives I interviewed. No matter the level of the person, they recognized when fear played a role in their decision process. Make no mistake, it's influencing your decision making whether you know it or not. So it's best that you know it and you know why. Now for now, simply practice noticing the nagging feeling and giving it a name. So querying your brain and then asking yourself, is that feeling coming from fear or is it coming from insight? And the next time we'll delve more deeply into that fear-based response because it's so common and look at ways to resolve it. You see, here's the key. When you're overthinking it, you have to resolve the nagging feeling to solve overthinking. We'll look at ways to resolve the fear so that it doesn't grind your decision making to a halt or cause poor decision making. So to recap, identify that phrase that will best allow you to query your brain in order to name the nagging feeling. And when you notice that nagging feeling, dig in to determine if it's coming from fear or insight. So that's it for today, and I will see you again soon.